Okay, what is up YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. So you're thinking about wrapping your car. Today, I'm going to be trying to share as much as I can about 23 tips and tricks I can share with you that I learned from wrapping my car the very first time. If y'all haven't seen that video, y'all can go check it out. Video in the description where I do the whole thing. We're going to get right to it, but before we do, hit that like button. I'll catch you in a second.
Faze, take a moment, let it faze you. Faze, take a moment, let it faze you.
Okay, so first, before we get into the rest of these things, I do want to say the best way you can possibly learn how to wrap your car is watching people who've wrapped cars before, seeing them actually do the wrapping process. So you can see how the material interacts with them and the stretching, placement. You just learn from almost doing, you can kind of experience it that way. Alright, and so now we're going to get into all the technical tips and tricks I have for you. Let's get it. Number one, glass. Alright, so there's this thing people call glassing when you do your wrap. It's really pretty much just laying the vinyl on your car as flat and clean as possible so that you can start off with a nice clean palette to do your panel. It makes the whole job, if you can do it right, it makes the whole job so much more easy. It's easy to do that on panels like the hood, your roof, top of your trunk, any flat surface really that doesn't have curve. Now, if you can get this down, especially if you have like a friend, hold two corners on one side, the other friend hold the other two corners, lay it down flat as possible, squeegee it out, and it looks great from there. That's called glass. Number two, the triangle method. So you use the triangle method when you attempt the glass and it doesn't work out too well. You know, sometimes we try our best, but it doesn't get quite there. So using the triangle method, you go to one corner and lift it up and bring it back. Try not to stretch it too much, but that will relieve messed up tension in that area. And then you can do that for all the corners, and you should have a pretty decent flat surface. All right, number three, the squeegee pressure. I remember my first time actually using this squeegee on a piece of vinyl that I laid pretty flat. And I was like, okay, it's perfect. And then I went to squeegee it and I did it too light. And doing that will mess up getting the vinyl to stick on the surface how it's supposed to without trapping air under it. So when you do it, you actually want to apply a good amount of pressure, evenly, not too hard, but not too soft. I was scared I was going to scratch it like it's paint, but it's not paint, it's vinyl, and you have to put a little bit of pressure behind it to get a good, flat, nice finish. A lot easier. Again, you could look out for that while you're watching me do it, or you could watch someone else's video, I guess, but that's for the less loyal. Number four, try your best to avoid having to stretch the material as much as possible. Of course, the material is made to be able to stretch, and that's why it works so well with cars, because of the curves and all that. You can stretch it over those, but the point is to try to minimize the amount of stretch that you put on the vinyl so that it can look as nice as possible, but more importantly, it makes the process a lot less complex. If you do stretch it unevenly, it can leave stretch marks in your vinyl, so you'll be able to see kind of like a line where the stretch started. Or if you overstretch the vinyl, you'll start introducing what we call stretch buildup, or you'll start seeing fingers or bunching, and it's really just a slippery slope. The more fingers and bunching you have, the more you feel like you should stretch, and then it's an infinite loop, and then you get to the corners and edges, and it's just an insane headache. This makes the rest of the job a whole lot more difficult, so we just try our best to avoid it to make the job easier and more straightforward, and better looking to last longer and all that type of stuff too. So try your best to avoid it. But that leads us to number five. Of course, you're going to have to stretch your vinyl at some point, especially if you get to the points where there are big curves, bulges, and things like that, right? So when you do, use a heat gun. Now, when I tried the very first time, I used a hair dryer. I thought I could get by doing that. It didn't work out too hot. Some people have had success with it. My wrap was a little bit more thick than 3M. It didn't work out too hot. I'm not gonna lie. I would suggest just going ahead and getting the heat gun. They're fairly cheap on Amazon. If you find one, you guys can use the affiliate links that I have in the description. And once you get your heat gun, you need to apply the heat sparingly and evenly across the vinyl so that you can get a nice even stretch and so don't tear your vinyl, because if you apply too much heat, it damages the vinyl. Number six, when you get to a bubbled section or an area that protrudes from the car, like say a wheel well, right? The rear quarter panel that goes out and over the wheel, that area is going to probably be one of the areas where things get a little bit frustrating if you don't know how to properly approach wrapping that bubbled area. The right way to go about doing it that makes the whole process easier is starting with the flat surfaces around that section. So you would start at the top and lay the top part of the quarter panel flat as possible, and then once you get halfway between the top of the quarter panel and the beginning of the wheel well, I would stop and then start trying to flatten out the areas around. If you can, make a relief cut where the wheel is under the wheel well, and try and bring down the rest of the wrap kind of, straight so that the rest of the wrap is even, and then stretch towards the middle and work towards that bubble, and then come down. This will save you a ton of headache and get the job done properly. All right, number 7. Read between the lines. Now, usually that's a metaphor, but this time I mean it a bit more literally. The lines that are created from stretching and all that are called fingers, and usually you can tell exactly where the tension is that might need to be corrected if you read the lines. So the best way to figure that out is by watching people wrap their cars, and you can actually see how the material moves and works with relieving the pressure as you follow those lines and kind of chase them away. Definitely go watch people do that. It's super important to learn how to do that so that you don't cause an excessive amount of bunching where the excess wrap starts to come towards each other. Kind of want to chase them outwards away from each other. Yeah. Number 8. Now this is for when you're done with the rest of your panel but you get to the edge. Do not stretch it over the edge of the panel. You want to be able to get the rest of your vinyl wrapped down nice and evenly, possibly a little bit of stretch at the end if there's some wrinkles, but definitely don't pull over and tuck like how you would with a bed or something. You don't want to do that, because if you overstretch past the edge, once the vinyl hits some heat in the real world, it's going to want to shrink back, and that's never going to look good. Things start looking a little tacky. So don't stretch over the edge, just lay it down flat. Try and get it even if you can, and apply the least amount of stretch possible at the edges. Number 9. Now we just talked about the edges, but we're going to talk about the corners now, because that's, again, something specific. Once again, like I just said, when you get to the corners, instinct is going to tell you to kind of pull it over the edge and tuck it. Well, this time that's kind of right. I know I just told you not to stretch over the edge, but with the corner it's a little bit different. You're only going to use that stretching sparingly, of course, but at every corner there's usually going to be a little bit of bunching that happens when you pass the corner. So you're going to have to stretch and tuck under. Now it might be a little confusing because I just said the opposite of the edges, but it works really well in making sure that you get nice, clean, smooth finished corners that are well done. Now, especially if you've done the rest of the panel nice and well and it looks right, that corner will be done really well and held in place by the rest of the vinyl. If you don't use this technique, you'll have a bunched up corner, and oftentimes it kind of looks a little sus. So you're welcome. Okay, number 10. We call this the tuck and trim. This is for once you're done laying the rest of your vinyl and you have an excess of vinyl that is hanging over the edges. You'll always have this, and it's a good thing. But the best way to get rid of it is just using a knife that comes with most of the kits if you get one. Again, those links are in my description. You just get a sharp knife, X-Acto knife type of blade, and you just run it between that panel and the next. And it should be fairly easy, and I can illustrate it for y'all right now. If you look right here, say this is my X-Acto knife. It's not, it's just a flathead screwdriver, but you would slide it between the panel and kind of under, and it comes out pretty nice. Okay, and so separately, if you get to a point where you need to cut the vinyl where it's not an A, this is what we would call an inlay. So like maybe the back of your trunk, the door jamb in your car, you would often try and use what we call knifeless tape so that you don't use your knife and cut into your paint that's underneath. You want to kind of preserve that so that when you do take the vinyl off in the future, your paint is still in good condition and you're fine to drive it without having to wrap it again or having to get new paint. That would be a pain. So knifeless tape, it's pretty easy to use. You just lay it down before you lay your vinyl. Flatten it out with the squeegee and everything. Lay the vinyl past it, of course, and then leave some of that knifeless tape past where your vinyl will stop so that you have some that you can kind of pull on and release the string that's underneath. Once you release that and pull it up, it'll cut a very nice clean line without damaging your paint underneath. Number 12. Once you finally have your wrap at your house, it got to you in the mail. Take your time to test out the wrap, how it works. Play with it. See if you can get it to stick to your car, heat it up, stretch it out. Try to use the heat gun to heal it, crinkle it up, all that type of stuff so you can actually see how it works. And maybe test it by placing it and putting it down on the car. You can lift it up again later. It really gives you the ability to understand how the material works once you have it hands-on. It's super important because that's your first time experiencing the vinyl and how it's going to be reacting to the different things that you do with it throughout this whole process. Definitely helping you out a ton. Section 3. picking out the right vinyl. Now this is a really big one. I know I took a long time to pick mine out, specifically because I really wanted to have a good color, but then I found all the different qualities and technologies that were built into the different types of wrap that are built by different companies. So we'll get into that right now. Number one, the thicker the vinyl wrap is, the more difficult it is to actually wrap. Now, thicker vinyls may be easier to actually lay and get them down straight because it's more difficult to crinkle them. But when it comes to laying them in recesses and like more curved areas or complex areas, it gets a whole lot more difficult. So then you might want to have a thinner one. Well, a thinner wrap is easier to tuck into recesses and all that type of stuff. It's easier to rip and it's easier to overheat. So again, think about all these things as you're ordering your wrap. Number two is how sticky the vinyl wrap is. So some companies make their tack really, really sticky just out the box. You put it on and it's really hard to take it off. That's cool if you really need something durable. Some companies decide to use heat activated adhesive on the back of their wrap. So that means it's like lightly sticky when you put it on so that you can pick it up and move it around a little bit. And then once you actually apply heat after squeezing or whatever, then the adhesive starts to do its magic and it really sticks. I like that the most, to be honest, because it gives you some forgiveness. You can pick things up, move them around, stretch it out again, pick it up, lay it down, and make sure the job's done right, and then heat it and really lay it down nice and tight and for a good finish. But different jobs call for different things, so definitely do your research on that and see what's the best fit for you. Number three, every company offers a different sort of air release technology within the vinyl wrap. So on the back of the vinyl wrap, there's these little structures and lines that allow the air to move under the wrap once you laid it down. This helps release the bubbles that might be caught under your wrap. It's super important and makes your job look more quality the better the air release technology is. Of course, a lot of companies have it. Of course, some of the companies don't. So like Alibaba wraps, some of them don't have that super good air release technology or any at all. And that might be why they're so inexpensive. So just double check as you're buying them in the descriptions and all that type of stuff. Number five, prep your surfaces and keep a clean environment while you're doing the job. Not gonna lie, I definitely messed up doing this a couple times, and it was really frustrating. And it was really frustrating trying to make sure that the job was done right, so I would just go back and clean off the stuff, but it just would make the job a lot easier if I hadn't gotten dirt or dust touching the floor onto the wrap at all. Wipe down your surfaces with isopropyl alcohol. Now this is super important because the isopropyl alcohol removes all the oils on the surface and dries the surface very, very well before you put your vinyl wrap on. You wipe down the panel you're about to wrap and the panel around it because you don't want to get any dirt or oils or nasty under your vinyl because it won't stick for long. Super important, do that. Number six, make sure you get one of those little magnet holder things or a pair because it makes the job so much easier, especially if you're doing it by yourself, not with a friend. I had to call my friend Peter to come help me last time so that I could place it properly on the bumper because it was just way too wide for me to be able to hold it on both sides, evenly make sure things were in place. So if you have those magnets, you can stick one side as if you have another person on that side holding it and then bring it around to the other side and just make sure things are tight and on where they're supposed to be. I wish I knew that was a necessity. I'd seen it some places, but nobody really emphasized the importance of that, especially if you're doing it by yourself. So that's it for the different types, really. Every company does their own thing. As for my top three companies for vinyl wrap, I think would be 3M, Tech Wrap, Avery. Of course, there are a ton of quality wraps out there, but those are the top three that I really know. And Tech Wrap makes some really super dope colors. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but that's what I put on my car. In the future, Tech Wrap, if y'all do want to sponsor me or something, I'm down. I might be trying to change the color up. Hit me up in my email. Alright, so section 4. What comes after your wrap is finished? This is a really important question that nobody talks about unless you specifically look for it. And I think it's something that everybody should know so that they don't go and mess their wrap up as soon as they're done. So tip number 1 on that section is once you're done wrapping a panel, go back and do something called post-heating. Some people use a torch, some people use their heat gun. I would suggest using your heat gun, especially if it's your first time. That way you don't mess things up and burn your car down, just to be safe. But post-heating allows you to really make sure that the vinyl is relaxed on the surface that it's in. It exposes air that's trapped under your vinyl so you can chase it out, especially if you have a wrap that comes with good air release technology. It's super important and will increase the longevity of your wrap. Great tip right there. Number 2, pay attention to curing time. I'm not going to say you can't use your car once you're done. You can use it once you're done, but I would definitely be cautious. Stay away from wet areas. If it's raining outside, don't go on the highway. If water gets under your wrap, it's not gonna last a long time. It won't be a problem once it's actually cured. I think it takes maybe 2-3 days. Sit it out in the sun a little bit so it can get heated up and like cool down a little bit. Yeah, do that. It's super important to make your wrap last and look good for a long time. Alright, and finally, last but certainly not least, don't rush the job. Okay? Something I've always heard is do it right or do it twice, especially when it comes to projects like DIYs, working on your car, or home improvement projects. If you do it rushed the first time and you don't put your best foot forward, you're gonna have to do it again. I've learned this lesson so many times, and when you rush things, it's less enjoyable. That was my point of making this video for you guys. Hopefully, I can save you some time so you can prepare, make sure you have everything that you need. Set aside a good, realistic amount of time, maybe a good weekend, clear your schedule, maybe have a buddy come help you, and yeah, enjoy it. These are the memories that you're gonna make and remember when you look at your car every time. So you wanna make sure it's good, fun vibes. That's all I got for you guys today. Appreciate you for sticking around if you're still here. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I put a lot of work into this, really researching and taking my time. You guys, so yeah, I'll be trying my best to make some more quality content and all that type of stuff. It's your boy Curtis Wolf. I'm out. But yeah, go ahead and watch the rap video where I actually rap my car, you know? Yeah, I'm out. Peace. Come on. Beautiful.